The staff at the Toto house had a private name for the way the boss behaved about the Cameroonian housekeeper, and the name was not kind. They said he was obsessed with her. They had reasons. He knew her shift pattern by heart, which he did not know for anyone else, including his own driver. He had the gate code changed twice in 3 months, and both times she was told before the head of household was. He had a camera installed on the lane outside the service entrance, pointing at nothing, at an angle that covered no part of the property. He asked Mrs. Sekia every single evening, in the same flat voice, whether Fatso-san had come in on time, and on the 2 occasions when the answer was no, he had left a meeting. Naj Fatso, 29 years old, 4 years in Japan, 14 months in that house, did not know about any of it. She knew that the boss was polite and quiet and did not look at her, which she appreciated, because she had spent a considerable amount of her life managing men who did. She knew he read late. She knew he took his coffee black and lied about it to his doctor. That was the entire content of their relationship, and if you had told her in January that within a year she would hear that man say the words, "She's my wife now," in front of 9 people on a station concourse, she would have laughed at you in 3 languages. Her ex-husband found her on the 2nd of March. His name was Ryusei Toto. He was 38, and everyone who knew him thought he was lovely. That is not a detail I am adding for flavor. It is the mechanism. He was a regional manager for a stationery distributor. He coached a children's baseball team on Sundays. He remembered your mother's illness and asked after her. When Naj finally left him, after 3 years, at 11 at night, with a gym bag, through a window, because the front door of that apartment had a chain that could only be undone from the outside, the reaction of every mutual acquaintance was that she must be having a breakdown. Because Kadota-san was lovely. He had never hit her in the face. He was extremely careful about the face. What he had done instead was the long, patient, administrative version. He held her residence card for safekeeping. He put her salary into a joint account she could not access alone and gave her a weekly allowance in cash. He co-signed her language school loan and then reminded her, roughly monthly, that if she left, the whole balance became hers and she would be deported as a defaulter, which was not true, and which she believed for 2 years because she had nobody to ask. He drove her to work and picked her up. He told her gently that her Japanese was not good enough to handle City Hall, and that he would do it, and so for 3 years every official document with her name on it passed through his hands, and none of them passed through hers. That is what it looks like. There is no bruise to photograph. She got out in the winter of her 3rd year with the help of a woman at a support center in Nagoya who told her one sentence that broke the spell. He does not have the power he says he has, and I can prove it to you on paper in 1 afternoon. The center placed her, eventually, into domestic work through an agency that specialized in exactly that. Women who needed a job with an address attached, and no questions. The Toto household took 2 of their placements a year and had done for a decade. Mrs. Sekia interviewed her, told her the silver was to be done on Tuesdays, and did not ask her a single thing about why she had come. 14 good months. She sent money to her mother in Douala. She had a room. She started sleeping through the night around month 7, which she has said is the moment she knew she was going to be all right. And on the 2nd of March, a man in a hooded coat stood at the far end of the service lane for 40 minutes with a phone in his hand, and one of the Toto organization's people made a note of it. Because that is what those people are for. Ryusei Toto was 41, and he had been running that organization for 6 years, and the file came to him on the 4th of March because the man in the lane had also been photographed the previous week outside a supermarket in Chikusa. and twice at the station, and the pattern was not a pattern about the house. It was a pattern about a person. He had the man identified in a day and a half. It took another 2 days to get the rest of it: the marriage, the divorce, the 2 withdrawn police consultations, the loan. And this is the part that the house staff, gossiping in the kitchen about their obsessed boss, had no idea about. He did not tell her. For 4 months he did not tell her, and he has since described that as the single worst decision of his professional life. His reasoning at the time was that she had been living quietly for a year, that she looked, finally, like a woman who slept, and that the information would take that away from her while he handled it. So he put a camera on a lane. He changed a gate code. He had her driven. He memorized a shift pattern so he would know to the minute when she was in the open. He built a wall around her without ever once telling her there was something outside it. Twice in those 4 months, he nearly told her. The first was in April, in the kitchen, when she came in laughing about a man who had been standing across the road from the greengrocer looking at his phone and had said something about how Japanese men were the only men on earth who could loiter politely. Mrs. Sekia laughed. Toto, standing in the doorway with a cup he did not want, said nothing at all and went upstairs and sat on the edge of his bed for a while. The second was in June, when she asked him directly why the gate code had changed again. He said there had been an issue with a delivery contractor. She looked at him for slightly too long and said, "D'accord," which he did not understand and which he thought about for the rest of the week. The staff called that obsession. It was not obsession. It was fear, managed by a man whose entire training was in controlling situations, and it had a defect in it so obvious that a child could have found it, which is that a wall you do not know about is a wall you can walk straight out of. On the 11th of July, Naj Fatso swapped shifts with a girl whose father was ill, finished at 6 instead of 9, told nobody, and took the subway to Nagoya station to buy a birthday present for her mother. He was waiting at the top of the escalator. She has said the worst part was not fear. It was the way her body simply went back. 3 years of it, instantly, like a light switch. He said her name. He said he had been so worried. He said her mother had been trying to reach her, which was a lie and which he knew would work. He put his hand on her upper arm, in the exact place he had always put it, in a crowded concourse, in front of hundreds of people, smiling, and to every single person walking past, they were a couple having a conversation. "Come home," he said. "You've made your point. Let's get a coffee and talk about it like adults." She said no. He didn't let go. She said no again, louder, and a woman with a suitcase glanced over and then looked away, because he was smiling and well-dressed and she was a foreign woman raising her voice. That is when the Toto people arrived. 3 of them. Then 5, then more, coming through that concourse fast enough that the crowd opened up. And then Ryusei Toto, in a gray suit, walked through the gap they made and stopped about 2 meters away and looked at the hand on her arm. Kadota, to his credit or otherwise, did not let go immediately. He said something about a private family matter, and Toto said, quietly, in a voice that carried anyway, "She's my wife now." The concourse did something. The 5 men behind him did something. Naj Fatso, who understood exactly what those words meant in that country and in that context, and had never in her life been more surprised, did nothing at all. Ryusei Kadota let go of her arm like it was hot. Because here is what that sentence actually is, and it is not romance. In that world, it is a wall with a name on it. Every man in Nagoya who had ever taken money, sold a car, run a bar, or paid a fee understood in 1 second what had just been declared, and what the price of ignoring it would be. It cost Toto nothing to say, and it made her, in that instant, the single most untouchable woman in the prefecture. Kadota went pale and stepped back and started to apologize. To him, not to her, which she says is the detail she has never gotten over. They took her home. Somebody put a coat around her because she had started shaking about 90 seconds later, the way you do. And 2 hours after that, in the west room of that house, Naj Fatso stood in front of the head of the Toto organization and lost her temper completely. How long have you known? 4 months. 4. She actually laughed, one furious note. 4 months. And the camera in the lane, and the driver, and the gate. Yes, and you did not think to say one word to me? To the person? The person it is happening to? I thought you would be frightened. I was already frightened, she said. I have been frightened for 6 years. I am extremely good at it. It is the one thing in my life I have practiced. What I have never had, not once, not from him and not from anybody, is information. She was crying by then, and she was furious about that too. If you had told me in March, I would not have swapped my shift. I would not have gone to that station alone. You took the only thing that keeps a woman like me alive, which is knowing what is actually happening, and you kept it in a drawer to protect me. Do you understand who else did that? Do you understand who else decided things about my life without telling me? For my own good, Ryusei Toto stood there and took all of it. Then he said, "You are right, and I will not do it again, and I owe you one more apology, which is bigger. I said a thing about you in public that was not true, and I did not ask you first. You did not consent to be anybody's wife on a station concourse." "No," she said, "I did not." "Then tell me what you want done about it. If you want me to retract it, I will retract it tomorrow, publicly, and I will find another way to make him safe to be near. It will be slower, and it will be worse, and I will do it." And Naj Fatso, and this is the part she is proudest of, did not answer that night. She said she would think about it. She thought about it for 6 days. On the 7th she came and said, "The sentence stays, not the marriage. The sentence." Because it works, and she was not going to throw away the only thing standing between her and that man out of pride. But there would be conditions, and the conditions were these. He tells her everything, immediately, always, even the things that will frighten her, especially those. He never again decides anything about her name, her body, or her whereabouts without asking her out loud first. And nothing else changes. She keeps her job, her wage, her room, and if any of that changes because of this arrangement, she walks out and takes her chances. He agreed to all 3. Then he added a 4th, which was hers to accept or refuse, that she would meet a lawyer he would pay for, and that the lawyer would work for her and take instructions from her, and would be under a written obligation to report to nobody else, including him. She took it. It was the best decision either of them made. Because the actual rescue, the real one, the one that mattered, did not happen on that concourse. It happened over the following 11 months in offices, and it looked like nothing at all. The lawyer got the loan unpicked, a co-signed instrument, obtained by a man who had controlled all of her documentation, with a repayment history showing every yen paid from an account she had no access to. It took 4 months, and it ended with the balance gone, and a letter she keeps framed. The lawyer got the residence situation straightened out, off any status that had ever depended on a husband, onto her own footing through her own employer and her own years in the country, with a permanent residency application filed in the 2nd year that was approved in the 3rd. And the lawyer took the surveillance log, a genuine one, professionally compiled, dates and times and photographs, 41 separate contacts over 5 months. Into a police station in Nagoya and put it on the desk. And this time it was not a foreign woman's word against a lovely man who coached children's baseball. It was paper. Kadota was served with a protection order in the spring. He violated it in June by turning up outside the house, which was, in the end, the most useful thing he ever did, because the camera on the lane that had been pointing at nothing for over a year was pointing at exactly the right thing at 11:40 that night. He was arrested. He was prosecuted. The stationery distributor let him go quietly, and the baseball team found another coach, and the mutual friends who had thought she was having a breakdown mostly stopped calling, and 2 of them wrote to apologize, and she answered one of them. She stayed at the house. Everyone assumed she wouldn't. The staff stopped calling him obsessed. What they said instead, from about the 2nd year, was that the boss had gotten strange about honesty, that he had developed this habit of telling people things they would rather not know, in advance, in detail, before he did anything about it, and that it had spread down through the whole organization and slowed everything down and, in a couple of situations, saved a great deal. Mrs. Sekia, who missed nothing in that house for 30 years, has said she watched the entire thing happen and never once saw either of them do anything about it, and that she nearly went mad. It was the 4th year when he asked her, and he did it appallingly badly in a corridor, holding a folder, out of nowhere, and Naj Fatso looked at him and said, "Non. Absolutely not. Not like that. Go away and do it properly." He went away. He came back 3 weeks later and did it properly, sitting down, in daylight, with nothing in his hands, having first said out loud that she could say no, and that her job, her room, her wage and her lawyer were untouched either way, and having, she noted, clearly rehearsed the whole thing in front of a mirror. Badly, she let him finish. Then, she said yes. They were married the following spring, quietly, at a registry office in Nagoya with 11 people present. One of whom was the woman from the support center who had once told her a single sentence in a small room that changed her life. And afterward, on the steps, one of his men, the same one who had been on that concourse 4 years earlier, said something to another one, quietly, that Naj happened to overhear. He said, "So, she's his wife now." She turned around and told him, in Japanese, that yes, she was, and that this time it was true, and this time somebody had asked her first, and that he could tell the whole prefecture the difference between those 2 sentences. Because, as far as she was concerned, it was the only thing about that entire story worth repeating.